Namaste and welcome everyone to this podcast. And today I want to explore the qualities of the advancing soul. And what are signs that we begin to see as we grow in our spirituality, as we grow in our evolution, as we see the practice of sadhana, the different disciplines, if you will, of the yoga tradition. And I want to explore with you what begins to happen. What are some of the experiences that we begin to have? What are some of the ways that the world begins to appear to us? So this is a broad topic because every individual is different, right? Each person has their own karma, their own body constitution. And so for each person, obviously, it will look a little different. Each person will experience their evolution, their climbing of this ladder, their ascension in a different way. And I want to begin by creating a visual of the spine like a ladder. And we know that in the spinal chakra system, there are the 5 elements, right? And these elements are the same elements that Ayurveda recognizes that exist within creation. These were expounded in the great text on Samkhya, called the Samkhya Karaka of Kapila. And in this text, we see the 5 elements coming to their culmination. These 5 elements are very much alive in the Tantra tradition, in the Hatha Yoga tradition, which aims to balance the sun and moon energies. We often hear that as defining the term Hatha Yoga, sun and moon balance. But these elements are not merely elements in the sense of just earth, water, fire, air, and ether. They are vibrations. These are energies. And most importantly, understand the elements as various forms of consciousness. Okay? And so visualize now a grand ladder. And this ladder is planted very strongly into the earth in a vast field, an open field that is surrounded by a forest in the distance. It is hilly. There are larger mountains also in the distance. But this ladder is pointing upwards. It's vertical, as is the human being walks upon the earth, like a vertical bolt of energy. And think of a lightning bolt, right? It strikes with tremendous power and energy and sound. And so this ladder as it points upwards, is very, very tall and goes way high into the sky. So far that it disappears. So if you imagine yourself walking up to this ladder, and consider this moment when you discover this ladder. This is a moment in our life when we are questioning the world. We are looking for something more in our life that is beyond family, that is beyond our job, that is beyond the material things that we've acquired in our life. This is an inner search. This is an inner calling, if you will. Something that's calling us, something that is drawing us to go beyond the mundane things and mundane aspects of our life. As we explore this within ourselves, we have to go into an open space, a clearing, a space in our lives, call it a place in our lives that allows us the capacity to introspect, to question, to explore, ask questions, contemplate. What am I doing here? Where am I going? And this space, this place, requires an opening, a time in our life where we have some solitude. We have some time to be alone, to be silent, which eventually will lead us to being still. These three are like pillars to ascending this ladder. Solitude, silence, stillness. The three S's, if you will, the three sacred pillars of being able to ascend this ladder. Why is it important to ascend this ladder? Because it represents honoring the self. It represents honoring our unique disposition, our unique purpose in life. And following this path, if you will, first to the opening in the field, first getting yourself to visualize yourself to get to this point where you can begin to visualize and to see this life that you want to manifest. And think of this opening, this field where this ladder sits, almost like, imagine it's like a tree, it's coming out of the earth. Firmly rooted, it's not going to fall over, it's well rooted into the earth. And it has these wide steps, these grand columns on each side. that are inviting us to climb up. And naturally, the lowest step, the first step, is very broad, very wide, very thick, almost like a bench. You can sit on it. It represents the earth, the heaviness of the earth. It represents the stability of the earth. It represents the capacity the earth has to grow, to develop, to sustain life. And this is that first step. And so now we've created this visual. We're contemplating the importance of solitude, embracing it, being alone, having this time of silence, of quietness. Why? Why is this important? Why do we resist that? Why are gadgets such an obstacle to that? Because the ego, the conditioned mind, thrives on drama. It thrives on activity. It is fickle, as Krishna refers to in the Gita. It is ever-changing. It is not reliable, and it is not our true nature. So, solitude helps us to calm the mind and to begin to experience moments of silence that lead to greater stillness. But it begins first and foremost with creating the space for solitude. And let's define the word solitude. Let's look at the first three letters, the root of the word solitude. Sol, sole, from the Latin solo, to be alone, to be one, to be with the soul, soul, sun, soul, the indwelling self. What is within us, what is us, is the soul. It is an aspect of pure consciousness, of that divine consciousness. So we are the soul. The term solitude, for practical purposes, means to be alone. And that means spending time by yourself, in nature. And why is nature so important? Well, we have recognized that nature contains consciousness, contains the light of the sun, which thrives within the plant world. And this time in nature actually is a great boon to the psychic powers and the telepathic capacity the mind has. It's how we develop intuition. Do we ever rush to be busy in this day and age? Do we ever run to a place, to a city for vacation? No. We often visualize a quiet place, a natural place, an island, beaches, mountains. And so solitude is a metaphor for creating an opening. And that opening allows us to see and visualize our lives beyond the tatter of modern life, the busyness of modern world. Solitude is the price for greatness, Yogananda once said. And it makes sense because when we're alone, the mind becomes calmer. There is so much energy that goes out in speech, in speaking, in conversation. If we only realize that, the only way to discover this is to stop talking, to spend some time quiet. This is a practice of Gandhi. This is a common practice within the yoga tradition. Mauna. The power that silence brings leads us to become a muni, one who is free. And that abode of silence leads us to pure consciousness. So thinking again of this open space, and now you are walking up to this vast field, you see the ladder, and you first sit on the bench. And you're looking around, and you're enjoying the great vistas from this bench, the first step of the ladder. And you're beginning to appreciate the mountains in the distance, the shape of these rolling hills, their sense of tranquility, but yet there's a vast and eternal energy that is contained in those mountains. And then a bird, a large bird, flies across the sky, and you see that suddenly it stops to flapping its wings. It is now floating with the wind above you, and you're enjoying its grace as it flows through the sky. And you're captured by this. It has such freedom and such beauty and such pleasure. You can just see it in the way the bird's wings just outstretched, capture the power of the wind. And uses that wind to go higher up, to soar higher and higher, and then suddenly move in an eastern direction, and then back in a western direction. And just going with the flow of the wind, the power of the wind, the power of prana. Prana has 5 directions. It moves us up to soar. Prana can pull us down, and suddenly you see the bird tuck its wings and head straight down to the earth, and it lands right in front of you. And it's looking around. You make eye contact with this bird. And you realize this bird and at any moment soar right back up into the sky. It can move towards the eastern horizon. It can go to the west. It can create a beautiful dance in the sky. In this connection the bird has to the wind is the power of prana, the life force. And that life force begins at the very base of this ladder, because it is that life force that is flowing from the earth into this ladder. And at the very base of the ladder is the most stable step, which represents the apana vayu, the downward force of prana that grounds us, that connects us to the earth, that allows us to have good flow, good elimination, balanced menstruation. This is apana vayu. This is what Ayurveda refers to as the downward flow. And psychologically, it gives us stability, and most importantly, it gives us courage. A place to ground and to stand on both feet and say, I feel connected to this earth. And even if you're sitting on your bench, your feet are touching the earth, and you are enjoying greater stillness and stability there. And suddenly the bird looks off into the distance, opens its wings, and takes off. In this movement, this powerful metaphor in nature inspires you to stand now on the bench and look up to the next step, which has a natural shape to it. It isn't perfectly flat. It has a contour to it, almost like a wavy nature, like a swell in the ocean. The ocean is filled with water, and it has all these waves, these qualities, and no one wave is the same. So it is the same with this step. It has this kind of really unique and distinct feature to it. So you're standing on this first step, this large bench, and now you decide to step up to this second step, where the element of water resides. You notice that this step is damp. It's moist. Think of a big log or large piece of wood that's been in the water for days, maybe weeks. There's a moisture that wood begins to hold, right? It begins to absorb the water, and it makes it heavy. It increases its density, but yet there's still a malleable, a quality to this wood that you know that if you grabbed the edge of a stone or some sharp-edged stick, you could rub into it and begin to open this step. And so now you've stepped up. You're there, and you recognize that you can see further. You embrace the solitude that you have, that it is you alone ascending this ladder. You recognize that you're more still as you stand there. Your hands are holding both sides of the ladder, the columns. You're almost like hugging the sides because these columns are round and their circumference is large, they're thick. And so you're almost like hugging them. And you're looking around, you recognize that you're more still. Your vision is vaster. You can see further and further away. And it brings a greater feeling of peace. So again, those original pillars, solitude, silence, leads to greater stillness. And this element, water, is the second chakra. In the physical body, it's our urogenital system. And this chakra represents the connection we have to others, the capacity that we have to procreate. And this element brings us a compassionate nature, a softer quality into our lives. It's a little softer than the earth itself. There's something more substantial that we get from being on this step. And one of the things that the physical body represents, and I want to correlate it to these first two steps, which is the earth and the water. Because the physical body is basically the body that we refer to as the fleshy body. The bones, the muscles, all the tissues of the body. And it is this physical body that relies on nature's medicine, on the wisdom of nature for healing, for wellness, for balance. Because it is born of the earth. And these two elements allow us to enjoy the earth through the sense of smell. If you notice, animals have a heightened sense of smell. That's why when you walk a dog or you let a dog go, where does he run to? To the grass, to the bushes, to a tree. They naturally run to what has more smell, to what they connect to. And that's why the sense of smell is connected to the earth. Water is taste. And if smell is congested or if the nose is blocked, we cannot enjoy taste. So one supports the other. One needs the other. And we all know this and have probably experienced this whenever we've had a cold or some congestion, excess mucus, and then we eat and the food just has no flavor at all. So we're elevating now to a higher level. and you're able to see more. And that's what these elements represent. And from this step, you can see a body of water. You thought that the mountains had a feeling or a sense of eternity, but now the water seems limitless. You can see this body of water, and it has no end. It has no border. It seems to be an extension of the earth, and it just goes on forever and forever. Almost to the point where it appears that it drops off at some point. As many in the world thought for so long that the earth was flat. Remember that? This was contemplated by various explorers. Imagine that. But yet, these European explorers didn't understand what the Eastern mystics had known for eons before, that the earth is round, that the earth is a planet like the other planets that exist in the astral sky, the sky above us. So this body of water is vast. It has no limitations. At least that's the feeling, that's the energy you're getting from it. And it's inspiring you. Where does that go, you're asking yourself? I want to be there. I want to connect with it. Where will it take me? It looks so inviting. And this feeling doesn't go away. And we go on looking left, right, seeing as far as the edge of the water goes in all directions. And we're inspired to go further, to climb higher. And we look at this next step, and it has a lot of light. For some reason, the sun shines brightly on this next step. It almost has a reflective quality. It has a shine to it. It has a luster. And you reach up with your hand to touch it, and you realize it is warm. There's a brilliance about it. And why is it that this next step has light? So, how do you get there? Well, you reach up. And you realize this step is a little higher, but still close enough that you can lift yourself up to this step. And now you are lifting yourself to a standing position on this third and very warm step. It is inviting. It feels good on our feet, but it's taking us a little bit to get used to it. There's some power in this fire. And what's beginning to happen is that you're feeling lighter by being on this step. You're feeling like you can see even further now beyond the sea, beyond this body of water. And what you see are reflections of light, rays of light. This light represents the movement, the spiritual movement of sadhana, of increasing one's disciplines. And these steps, by ascending from the earth, the water, to the fire, these first 3 steps represent the very gross aspects of life, the very earthly aspects of life, the warmth of the sun, the softness and the stableness of the water, and the heaviness of the earth. These represent what Vedanta and yoga refer to, and Ayurveda, as the malas, the gross impurities, the toxins, if you will, of our consciousness. How do we overcome these gross impurities, these bad habits? Well, as we move and continue our sadhana, and I want us to understand that the steps that we're taking to ascend this ladder is the process of sadhana, that it happens gradually. We recognize different things in our lives. We feel lighter. We can see further. We begin to understand things we didn't understand before. Things begin to make more sense. Experiences that we had in the past now don't influence us as much, don't have such an impact on our mentality, on our emotions. We feel more removed. We feel clear and relieved. Spiritual sadhana moves on in a healthy way. Our negative qualities that are within us begin to diminish little by little. And our divine qualities are slowly revealed to us. And this quality that is revealing to us is the vision of the higher self. Now, with greater light, with greater capacity to see and understand, we're feeling more removed from the earth and the water. And the light is helping us to enjoy, to bathe in that light, to sunbathe, to soak in it. And you visualize suddenly a tortoise. Even though this body of water is far away, you see now, because these rays of light are allowing greater acuity, clarity, you see a small little island that you didn't recognize before. It actually has some trees. They look like palms by their curvy nature. But as you look on the bank of this little island, in the middle of this vast body of water, you see a tortoise, a big, gigantic tortoise. And it appears to have just come out of the water. And it inches its way up onto the banks of this fresh and majestic beach where the sand is pearly white with crystalline reflections of the sun. And we know the tortoise moves slow. But suddenly the tortoise stops and you recognize, why is it stopping? Why isn't it going further up? It's still close to the water. And suddenly you see the tortoise pull and retract its 4 limbs and includes its head. It has 5 in total. Just as the 5 pranas that influence the flow of the bird that we so gracefully observed, so the tortoise has 5 limbs and it retracts them into this grand shell, tucks them away in there in a way to be hiding, going into a special place. And you're noticing the sun shining on its brilliant shell. And it's not coming out. It's staying there for some time. And as you realize this, you notice that your eyes begin to close. And your eyes begin to feel a connection to your heart. There's an inner feeling you're getting and you can't quite understand it. Well, this gigantic tortoise is a symbol of what in yoga we call pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses. And the giant tortoise is Lord Vishnu's incarnation as Kurma Avatara. And as the symbol of pratyahara, it means to take in, to go within. And it is the bridge, if you will, from the lower world or the outer world to our inner world, to our inner space, to our heart, the place where we feel, where we connect, where we expand in our compassion, and most importantly, where our mind becomes more focused, more tranquil. The alternative to this is a mind that is distracted. It is referred to as vikshepa, a disturbed mind, a mind that isn't present, that isn't listening to the world, that is not in the present moment. This incarnation, this very sacred incarnation of Lord Vishnu's tortoise, Kurma Avatara, represents a capacity that we have to transform our consciousness, in a very delightful way. Because the sun is shining, but yet we're taking in and absorbing that ray of light through the outer shell of this body, this human body, like the shell of the tortoise. And it's warming that outer layer, but the powerful rays penetrate this shell and enliven the prana, because now those limbs aren't moving around. They're not throwing around energy in a dispersed and distracted way to the outer world. They are pulled in, and the tortoise is doing this to conserve energy, to empower itself, to gain in the light of awareness. And so pratyahara is the withdrawal of our five senses, just as we do every night in sleep, to restore our energy. And so this is the bridge between the outer world and the outer practices, the core ethical and moral principles of yama, niyama, as expounded by Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras. And the pratyahara is the withdrawal, is that the going inward to create greater focus of the mind, to remove the distractions of the mind, which are the thoughts, excessive thinking, which are emotions, our senses. Sight can be very distracting. Sight is the element of fire. Sight is this third step. It's given us greater vision to see this island in the middle of this vast body of water, and to see a small tortoise. What appears to be small is a vast tortoise. And that light is fire. That light is the sight of vision, that sense. But now that you've closed your eyes, you've gone within for a few moments, you're feeling that your capacity to go beyond the lake, to go beyond this body of water, to go beyond the island with this tortoise on it, is increasing. You're not feeling a limitation by what you are seeing in the physical world. Somehow, some way, this drawing inward of these senses is increasing your capacity to know, to grow in understanding, and to grow in something more subtle. So without opening your eyes, you're reaching up, and you feel in that distance with an outstretched arm above you, that next step. It seems so thin. That step seems so small. You're wondering, how can I stand on that? But yet I want to get up there. I want to grow. I want to know more. I know there is something more. That's what's going on inside of us. And when you're touching it, you're feeling a vibration, a frequency that's coming off of this step that at first you don't know what to make of it. And once your hand touches it, you feel that vibration move through your hand, move through your wrist and your arm. And now that vibration is like a current, spiraling. So visualize it spiraling through your arm, going into the chest cavity, into the heart, down into all the lower limbs, into your other arm, into your entire body. You're vibrating now. And you realize that this step has a lighter quality. It is the expansiveness of the heart. It is what is referred to as anahata chakra, unstruck sound. Om. There is that subtle feeling of Om, something eternal. It is the element of air that now is moving through you. It was that same element, that same prana, that life force that we saw the bird gracefully flying with. It landed on the earth, but yet it soared higher. And now you are climbing to this step, this fourth step, which represents the element of air. It is more subtle than the element of fire. Air represents touch, and you're feeling it in your touch. You're feeling the frequency of touch. You're connecting to this step because you're touching it. And it is through the touch that you feel confident enough now to step up, to go further, to go beyond the third step, and to feel more energy coming into the heart. Element of air. The organs are connected to the heart and to the lungs. But yet we're speaking of the spiritual heart. At the center of our chest is the chakra. Beyond that, even more subtle, is this, what is referred to as the hridaya, the spiritual heart, where the indwelling self, the portion of consciousness, exists. And it is here that the mind experiences this incredible tranquility, and all the things that were disturbing you and distracting you have just disappeared. And suddenly the feeling you have by being on this step is a connection to living things, to the world, to humans, to animals. You feel it in a very intrinsic way. And this vibration is a result of the withdrawal of our consciousness. We've gone inward. We have reached higher to something more subtle. And we're beginning to understand life. We're beginning to develop a resilience to life. We're becoming less reactive. The term is vairagya. which is the same experience that Ram had when he began his journey. As is explained in the great Yoga Vasishta, it was this great aversion, this vairagya, this dispassion that he was having with the world and the whole world process. He began to think, this world can't be real. This world can't be everything that we all seek. And as you continue to feel this vibration throughout your entire being, you're beginning to hear a sound in the distance. It's emanating with greater strength from the right side of your body, where the Pingala Nadi is more dominant than the lunar Nadi. It is more present, more active, if you will. And you take both hands with your pinky on the lower half of your lip, your ring finger on the upper part of the lip to close the lips, the middle finger to close the nose on each side, the nostrils, the forefingers to close the outer lids of the eyes, and the thumbs to close the flaps of the ears. The great Yoni Mudra, as mentioned in the Hatha Yoga text, as a technique to hear and see the subtle sound. The sound is Om. It is cosmic. And when we're able to close off these four senses, the fifth sense is naturally closed off because you're not touching anything. You're touching your face, but these four predominantly are in the head, near the brain. And by closing these to the outer world, now the Om, the cosmic sound, dwells within you. And you naturally start to recite it because you're hearing it. Om, Om. And it is coming from within you, and you realize, where is this sound coming from? It's inside of me, but I don't know where it's coming from. As you continue to recite Om, 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 you forget that you're on a ladder. You're not aware of this fourth step that you're on. And you feel very, very light. You're beginning to lose awareness of your body. In fact, this is one of the qualities of the ascension of consciousness. We're not as concerned with this car that we're driving around in. We're not overwhelmed by having perfect clothes or having a certain shape or weight to our body. We're embracing the body as it is. We know it's there. We're feeling the consciousness that is within it, the life force that is contained in Om, because it is Om, Om, A-U-M. It is physical, it is mental, it is It is beyond the two, body and mind. It is eternal. Hence, when you make the sound, go ahead and do that. What do? You close your mouth. When you say Om, you open the mouth. Ah, when you create the U, the U sound, you perk the lips. And then you close the mouth to complete the circle, right? So the mouth is open, it closes slowly, and it's like drawing a circle. So all words, in a way, all language is contained in that sound. Everything that you utter through that mouth, positive or negative, is contained in the Om. So, we are now in this expansive place of consciousness. The pranas have their 5 forms: influencing earth, water, fire, air, ether is sound, hearing. But what is beyond it? The mind. And so we move now, we have moved through these levels, these ladders, where we have climbed now to a 5th step on this ladder. We have ascended now to a level that takes us to the mind, where the clouds are. You're on this step now, going to this 6th step that reaches the clouds. And you're aware of these clouds. They're moving everywhere. They all have all types of shapes, qualities. It's almost like a story these clouds are creating. The metaphor of these clouds are your thoughts. It is the narrative that we create in our minds. It is the story that we keep narrating in the mind. The clouds are not who we are. There is something yet beyond these clouds, beyond the mind. And we want to discover it. We realize these clouds are not substantial. They're moving. They seem unreal because they are not real, just as our thoughts are not real. You're moving your hand through these clouds. You're pushing them around. And you realize you can't grab them. You can't shape these clouds. And so it is with these thoughts. They come and go. They move through us, creating stories and dramas, triggering emotions, actions and reactions that perpetually repeat themselves over and over again. They seem so familiar. These people, places, and things in this world seem so familiar, but they're not. They're not real. They're part of conditions in the mind. They're part of conditions that have programmed the brain. And this is now the domain that we must climb beyond. We must ascend the ladder beyond the clouds to the sky of pure consciousness, to the causal body, which consists of what is known as avidya, ignorance. And it acts like a veil, hiding the true nature of the self, of what we really are. It is the causal body that stores the karmas of innumerable births in the form of subtle impressions. So now we have to go beyond the clouds, and we have to go into the sky. This place, the mind, is correlated to the third eye, the spiritual eye. And here, there are no elements. It is the mind space. It is a subtle domain where the chakras exist. And it is here where those elements descend into the human form. But it is here where the door beyond the five elements and beyond the physical world of time and space, here is the door to the sky of pure consciousness, to the sky of eternity. And as sadhana progresses, as aspirants, the practice of concentration and meditation blossoms into the experience of what is known as samadhi, superconsciousness. The lower world, or the world of earth and water, is the conscious world. When we moved into those mid elements in those second, third, fourth steps, it's the subconscious world. And the mind brings us to the unconscious world. This is where we go at night, at sleep. We're not aware of our name. We're not aware of a body or even the home or the place where we're sleeping. We enter the unconscious domain. It is profound and referred to as the deep sleep state. And there is no dream when we can reach this state in sleep. But there is something beyond this unconscious state. There is a domain that is beyond that. And this domain involves the complete annihilation of the I, the ego, the name that we were given in this life, identification with male or female, pride in a culture or society, association with a certain culture or government or politics. All of these things don't matter anymore. And the ladder takes us into the bliss, into the emptiness, into the sky that is pure consciousness. We feel freedom. We feel completely open. We feel connected to all living things. We have respect for life. We feel that our actions should naturally contribute to others and to support the beauty of creation. All of these things are us, are part of the self, the oneness, the soul that we truly are. So may we all make time in our lives to find that ladder. It is there. When you're ready, it'll appear. You will find that ladder. And through the practice and the great teachings of yoga, Vedanta, you can begin to ascend into this domain that is within us, that is without limitations, that is available to all. So namaste to all of you, and thank you. Hari Om Shanti Shanti Shanti